All right. Welcome to meeting 15, I think. We have offshoots here with us today, presenting on sort of their progress, which I'm very excited about. We are recording, which is probably great since I think a bunch of people are in their cars today. So please drive safely. And if you want to come back and look at things, you can once you have landed, and the recording should go up a little bit later this week. There are captions if you need them. If you click on the three dots in the bottom right, the more button, you can turn on captions. If you have technical questions, Vanessa's not here. I usually send you to Vanessa, but oh, there she is. Message Vanessa. I'll take notes today so that everyone else can pay close attention. And I'm guessing we'll probably go closer to 5:30 than to 5:15. But as always, if you need to dip off, just check in on the notes and the minutes and the recordings at a later time. We do have a couple guests with us today. Thank you for being here. We tend to try to reserve public comment till the very end. If we have an open discussion time and you want to chime in, that's totally fine. If you have comments that are not directly related to that conversation, but you just want to make a comment about the plan in general, hang on to the very end of the meeting. Or you can go to our Summer Voice page as always and post them there. Put the link in. So last meeting we were missing a bunch of people. So if you weren't there, go back and take a look at those minutes. They're up. The video recording is now up as well. I tried to make sure that everyone had access to our Google Drive folder for all of our internal working documents. If anyone is having issues with that, just shoot me an email and let me know. But that has our outreach materials, the talking points, everything you might need for events, in addition to our event spreadsheet, housing things all together. I did set up a meeting for next Monday for an internal sort of debrief after this conversation. So as the offshoots team is presenting today, jot down comments, questions. You can either have that conversation directly here today. You can email me, or we can talk about it next Monday. So that we're sort of helping the team, steering them in the direction that we want earlier rather than later, as we discussed at the last meeting. And if you need to refresh on anything, you can go back to the video or back to the minutes prior to our conversation next week. And I'll pass all our comments on to Shelby and Kate, as I have in the past. I'm also, just as a heads up, I'm going to do an online push with our outreach materials too. We'll touch base about outreach stuff toward the end of this meeting as well. I know we've had a bunch of events. We're going to have some more coming up. So that's great. Thank everyone for your hours that you're putting in. I really appreciate it. Couple dates to keep in mind. I'll send everyone an email about this, but just a heads up, on June 7th and 8th, we're going to be doing a SPAP related planting engagement event in front of City Hall. So there's a big area of lawn right now that was installed last fall, and we're going to use some of that space to do demonstration plantings for this. So the offshoots team is going to be leading this planting. We're doing this all volunteer run. So it's kind of an engagement event and a planting all in one, which should be super fun, exciting. So that's going to be June 7th and 8th. The biggest time I think will be that Saturday, the 8th. So we'll have more on that coming up. Our June 10th committee meeting, we're also going to try to push this as our biggest kind of like, please everyone come, we're going to talk about the draft version of the plan, and this is your chance to really like share your questions, your comments. We want to hear from you. June 10th is going to be our biggest feedback public outreach committee meeting. So it's our normal committee meeting time, but I'm going to be pushing it in terms of like getting as many people we can to attend. And I'm going to ask all of you, you can start mulling on this now. I'm going to ask all of you to bring 2 people who are new to this to that meeting. So all of us will be trying to expand the audience for this beyond those of us who are already excited and in the know by bringing 2 additional people who might not already be excited about this, who maybe are going to be learning about this for the first time. And then we're working on a July release party with the mayor. We have to figure out dates. We're having a little bit of trouble seeing if we can get Nick and the mayor in the same place at the same time. Not sure it's going to work out perfectly that way, but we're trying to get Nick there too. So stay tuned for all of that. But June 7th and 8th and June 10th, those are going to be very important dates for us. The June 10th meeting will be online. So just, we can hit as many people as we can. But the June 7th and 8th will be a nice opportunity for us to be in person. So keep an eye on that. Any other announcements that folks have related to this that you just want to, other events coming up, anything you want to let us know about?
I guess Carnival is the next big, like, Somerville fest, right? And that's the first weekend in June, or maybe the second weekend in June?
Yeah, June 2nd, I think. Amy's going to be tabling for another organization, I think. Renee's there for depaving. Lisa will be with the Growing Center. And we're wondering if we can have some SPAP representation there too. But yes, Carnival coming up June 2nd.
We have sorry, I'm just struggling with word at Fresh Pond. I know it's Cambridge, sorry, but we have a buggy. We cross areas, right? We have a buggy workshop where we are training people to record association between pollinators and their host plant. So that's a thing that we do, in the various community. So I just wanted to mention that.
And Claire, where do you, is all of the information about these buggy workshops on the Earthwise Aware website?
I will give you the link to the events like that. You can see all the events. You can see, let's go bugging. That's how we call it.
I love it. That's great.
That in the chat.
Okay, if there's nothing else, then I'm going to pass it over to Shelby and Kate. Shelby, you should be able to share screen if you want.
I'll just start. I have too many screens, so I can never remember which one to share here. Okay. So, oops, of course. So I'm just going to start with just showing in a quick agenda here, just so you guys know where we're headed. We want to use today as essentially a progress point check-in. So we don't have a formal presentation, but we do have some fun things to show you. I think hopefully we can have a great conversation about them. And what we thought we'd start with is a report outline, so you can see where we're headed with that, so that when we show up on June 10th, it's not a great surprise and you can weigh in. And I will, Allison, send you the report outline after the meeting, so that if you guys want to have a more robust conversation about it next week too, you can, but we'll go over that quickly. If you have any questions, we can talk about it. I only saved us a couple of minutes because I was trying to save us a longer period of time to chat plants. So we are going to show you this massive comprehensive plant list that we've been generating. We have a little homework assignment for you all for next week, or it can be flexible, I think, on when this homework assignment is done. And then we'll chat a little bit about some of the toolkit plant lists that we're generating, and we'll explain what that all means in just a second. And we can get a little bit feedback and chat about that. And then we want to save some time at the end of the meeting to talk about engagement a little bit more. We have some of the initial results that have been put into the digital form, and just have a little bit more of a conversation about how we might be able to get it out there, and if we feel like maybe we're not quite spotting the moonwalking bear quite yet. That was a spoiler. We're not quite spotting the bear yet. So we want to chat about that and see where we get. Okay, so we're going to dive right in. Let's chat about the report outline, and then we can have a few minutes conversation about that before we talk plants. So for the plan, you've seen some bits and pieces. When we first got together, we chatted about the data that we'd found. We talked about the species that are in Somerville. We talked a little bit about some of the plant associations. Some of you have reviewed the initial data report. Thank you so much. We've gotten some really great feedback to roll with on the data report. And so that's all going to get rolled in to the final plan. I'm going to call it a report today. I think it's just a little bit more straightforward if we call it a report. So the report that we're putting together, we'll roll all of that in along with the community engagement. We'll roll in the approach and the findings into that report. But I just want to walk through sort of how we're thinking it's going to be organized and what the framework is, so you all can see that and respond to that. So the final document will have an introduction from the mayor, and followed by what we're assuming as a good first section is why pollinators, and talking about just trying to meet people across all scales, the people that are less informed about this topic all the way through, right? So thinking about what are pollinators and pollination. This is sort of similar to the board that we had created, but much expanded upon that. So just a general introduction to the topic, what's at stake, what's going on, and why this is happening. Then followed by a section that is based on the report, the data report that we submitted. What are the pollinators in Somerville? We can think of this as that meet your neighbors idea, right? Here's all of the pollinators that are in Somerville, where we found them, when we found them, and then some other spatial contexts, things like where there's a lot of artificial light at night in Somerville, where the city-owned trees are, some of that analysis through there. That would be followed by the community outreach. We've been talking about section 2 and section 3 here. That's sort of what we've all in the RFP called task 1, right? Data, task 2, community outreach. These are really closely related to each other. But so following that up with what we're hearing from the community, what the people in Somerville are saying. And that we'll talk about that at the end. We haven't heard from too many people quite yet. So we want to keep expanding upon that as we go. And then taking all of that information and all of the literature review and understanding that we have on the topic and rolling it into recommendations. So these currently we're thinking of as being split into 3 parts. First being general recommendations and best practices for planting, landscape management and maintenance, and then non-landscape, what you can do if you aren't somebody that has access to a landscape area and what the best practices would be for that. The second part of that would be private space recommendations, how you can take those best practices and roll them into a private space. We'll get into the planting a little bit more in a second, but we're trying to meet the needs of many by providing a comprehensive plant list that we'll look at next and talk about a little bit more. And then also try to, sorry, I should backtrack a little bit. The comprehensive plant list is something that could be a resource for a broad range of people. It could be used by landscape architects under development review with the city. It could be used by the city planning. It could be used by someone that has a lot of garden expertise. But we also want to capture the people that maybe would open a document with 300, 400 plants on it and feel overwhelmed by providing some ideas about pre-planned gardens. And this is going to be a part of the toolkits. So the idea here is that we can use some of these pre-planned gardens to capture a broad array of pollinator species and also have some that are targeting more specific species as well. We'll come back to that more, don't worry. So private space recommendations, planting, landscape management and maintenance, non-landscape again. And then a big chunk is thinking about how the city can approach this. So again, sort of at the implementation level, how the city could think about planting in existing and new habitat spaces, how they could prioritize putting in new gardens, best practices, as well as at the policy level, thinking about what code and ordinance changes could be made, how they could be incorporating this into design review and potential city pledges. That will be followed up by what's next. That's the ongoing recommendations. That's thinking about plan rollout and pilot projects and monitoring ongoing and thinking about long-term for the city of Somerville beyond this project. Followed by references and a bunch of appendices that will have all sorts of great toolkit information, including lists, these comprehensive plant lists, all these guides to maintenance best practices, different potential garden typologies, as well as plant lists you could think of as, here's the most recommended species for Somerville, thinking about if you're a person who's going to put in a shade tree, you could go and you could find the list and you could say, okay, these are the top recommended ones for my area, all the way down through all these different typologies, thinking about plants for at-risk species, monitoring species, and replacements or swaps. So, oh, you wanted a burning bush? Try this instead. Not that you could get it, but let's think about what are some opportunities for, if you wanted an ornamental plant, is there one that you could do swap in instead? So that's the really fast outline. I wanted to do that fast. I might have done it a little too fast. Kate, do you have anything you wanted to chime in on about that before we see if anyone has any thoughts?
No,
Yes.
I think it's good.
Okay.
Fucking idiots.
All right. Allison?
David, were you chiming in or do you just, was that accidental of you? Oh, he's not even really there.
I'm sorry, am I not muted?
You weren't just
Oh my
then.
God. Oh my gosh, well, no, I'm sorry, I'm just in a lot of traffic. That was really rude of me. Apologize, everybody. So far, so good.
Okay.
We barely heard anything. There was just a little noise.
I'll mute you again,
Okay.
just checking that you weren't
Yeah,
chiming
do
in
that.
right
That's
when
a
they
good
said
idea.
questions.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks. Go ahead.
Yeah, so if anybody has anything they want to throw out there, any questions now, happy to take them. Otherwise, we can put a pin in this and send it to you so you can mull it over at your own pace.
Yeah, my guess is this is gonna be something for everyone to kind of review in detail and send us back comments. We can issue it right away, and then when you guys all convene next week, you can put the comments together and get it back to us. Is my guess, but if there's anything that anyone feels just from that short review that is missing, let us know. All right, kind of
Alright.
sounds like we'll move on and then we will.
Great.
We'll get, and if you have questions about this going forward, but that's what we're building off of as we're currently in the midst of writing the report, is that organization.
Great. Okay, so now we can dive into plant lists. So I'm just going to walk you through the comprehensive plant list and the homework assignment, and then we'll pass it to Kate to chat about the recipe cards. So Louisa came up with something, I think that was a great way of framing this the other day, which is that if we think of this comprehensive plant list as the pantry, this is all of the potential plants in Somerville that are benefiting pollinators. And then Kate will walk us through some sample gardens that could be some recipes that pull from this pantry. So what you're seeing here is a very large list of all of the species that we have compiled that started out with Nick's really wonderful and very detailed research where he looked at Somerville specific plant associations. So he looked at the flower visiting insects that were visiting plants in Somerville and got information about the percentages of taxa visiting each, as well as general associations. And so we have mapped in here that information. So you can see some of those percentages. It looks like a lot of information in there. And we also have those as separate Excel sheets that we can put in the final report as well. But so this was the starting point, was, okay, these are the species in Somerville that are using these plant species. And then
And again, Shelby, right, based on iNaturalist data, right? So the data is only and other data that Nick and Iwa Buggy collected, correct?
I believe so. Yes, I think we started with both the Iwa Buggy data that we had, as well as Nick went through each species and essentially took note of the interactions at a very detailed level for each species to see what proportion of them were using which species. And then from there, we expanded upon it using resources from places like Dr. Gajir, TPI, Xerces, New England Wildflower Society, Native Plant Trust, Northeast specific pollinator lists to expand upon it from there. So now what we have is a huge resource where we're gonna peel back a bit, right? And I'll walk you through all the different layers that we've got here, but just to put this out here, and Kate and I had talked about turning this off and I didn't, because I thought it was worth just showing you that some of the observations that we had were things like garlic mustard. We're not going to recommend that somebody put garlic mustard into their garden, but we, at this point in this comprehensive plant list, are tracking all of the information. So this was something that was an observed plant association, so it's on here. Before we get to the end of the project and this gets rolled out, we will certainly peel back and take out the things that we do not recommend. But just to sort of gather all of the information, and I think all of us are probably interested too, right? To see what's being used. So just to show how this could potentially be used, if you were I'll use myself as an example, as a landscape architect doing a project in Somerville in the future, I could come into this resource and I could say, I am looking for a tree or I'm gonna say a shrub. I'm gonna look for a shrub. I'm gonna look for a shrub, and I can toggle just to see my shrubs. And I could say I have acidic soil, and I could toggle to my acidic soil categories and really start to pare down and see what might work for my site. I can look at my sun, the sizing, most important to, well, I shouldn't say most important, it's all important, right? In picking the right plant for the right place. So we have soil textures, what they're adaptable to, where it's native to the county level, as well as bloom time. So coming up with a pollinator garden and I'm looking for a shrub and I know I want it to be on the late side, I can look and I can come up and I can see, look, witch hazel is fitting all of my needs. Then I could also come over, see the Somerville specific information. That wasn't observed in Nick's research on any of them, but the literature says that it is valuable for these other species. So it just gives you all of that information to use and make an informed choice as you're going through your planting. There's a larval host. And then we do have another column so you guys could see sort of what sources that we've gathered this all from as well. Kate, anything else that you wanted to say about the comprehensive plant use? We should talk about how people might use it, I guess, as well, a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So there are lots of columns in this, and I just saw a chat come in. Is there a portion about edibility in there? I don't know if we have human edibility as one of it.
We don't currently, no.
This is not, Renee's question was, is this just plants that have been observed in Somerville already? It is not. This is, we started with the plant observations that were in iNaturalist and Iwabuggy. We then added in all of the recommended plants that we found from many different sources, from Xerces and New England, like we mentioned, Native Plant Trust, that sort of thing, to create a much more comprehensive native plant list of recommended species that wasn't just based on the observations that were out there in the field, because as we all know, that is only the observations that have been recorded, and it only gets a certain number of folks. So we went to a much broader group. We also then added over on the right, you're going to see, so you have everything from, is it deciduous versus evergreen, the hardiness zone, the mature height, mature width, the solar exposure. Then we also have, as we go over the soil texture, like Shelby meant, if it has a wetland status, meaning is it facultative, is it wetland, is it an upland plant? So that if you're designing a rain garden, you might use a FACW plant or a facultative plant or a facultative upland plant. So those will all sort out. The native status was from GoBotany or USDA. If it wasn't available on GoBotany, we always sourced it on GoBotany first, which is the Native Plant Trust, really wonderful plant search engine. And then if you move over to the right, we also added in more columns for wildlife, meaning is this plant susceptible to deer and is it susceptible to rabbits? And we have a little key about what X versus the dashes mean. So that is in there as well. And then we have that these associations that shall be mentioned. We have NICS data about the percentages from the observed locations in Somerville, but we also just have the associations with those 6 different categories of insects on the right. And then NICS specific data is the next one that is over of the total different kinds of species and numbers of species for each of those particular plants, and then notes. And then even further over on the right, we have if Doug Tallamy lists it as a keystone genre. So those are his ones that he are saying might be toggled as more important than others based on his research. And then the very specific species interactions, if they were available, and our source list. So exactly where our information came from for each of these. And then, as Shelby said, we compiled everything all together so that we do not have a category for edibility, but we could there's a notes category. And if we wanted to have probably something on edibility, this isn't that could probably get added. And that's where we're looking for your thoughts. So definitely add things back and let us know what would be helpful. But this has obviously color and then when it's blooming as well.
Do you mind
Go ahead.
putting it back so we can see each other again?
Yeah. Oops. I can figure out how. It's not letting me here. Sorry. Sorry, Louisa. Oh no, it's not letting me.
Do you just mean stop sharing? Is that what you're
Yeah,
asking?
it's just not letting me stop sharing.
Oh.
Just offering pause. Oh, there it is. Okay, it was hidden. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I just, you know, the first time that I saw this, I was like, whoa, this is so much information, because it is. And I think it's really important for us to be thinking about how it's used both in Somerville and as a regional resource. And the columns are tiny, tiny, so I cannot really see anything on it. But I also want to know, like, can I use it if I'm trying to plant for a particular pollinator? Like, is it a way, can you
Yes.
reverse?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that's a great question, Louisa. And yes, there's a toggle so you can go by which group. So if you're planning for wasps versus native bees versus bumblebees, there is a toggle that you can go by that. And then within that data, you can look at the very specific species listed if we had specific species for each of them as well in the notes.
So I think it's important to think about, some people might be wanting to design for wasps and other people might
Sure.
be thinking, I want a beautiful garden. I don't really care that much about these things, but I care about the colors that it's going to have, or having all season bloom time. So I think it's important. What's important about this tool is that it can be used with people, for people, by people with many different intentions, and in the end should be adding more habitat, no matter what your intention is.
Exactly right, Louisa. And it's a perfect segue sort of into the next chunk of these recipe cards, but let's get more comments on this first, because we're going to show you guys a bunch of these design gardens for those different.
Yeah. I'm wondering what other people are thinking about
Yeah,
seeing
let's
that
hear what other people think on the list.
ginormous list.
It is a ginormous list, which is hopefully going to be an amazing resource for the city, but also other designers and homeowners, developers, everyone.
Amy, is that you with your hand raised?
Yeah, that's me. Hi.
Hi.
I'm on the phone, so I can actually see what's being presented. But the one question I have is whether I know it's always problematic to suggest particular businesses, but I feel like people could go into this list and be like, "Oh, I found these wonderful perfect plants," and then I have no idea where to find them. I contact all these garden shops and they don't have them, and then I kind of give up. So I'm just wondering, is there any way to integrate? I don't know if it's already in there, but where to actually find the plants once you pick them.
Shelby, you want to talk to that? So we were going to start to add a column about availability, meaning widely available, not as widely available. I think it's tricky when it's released from the city of Somerville, right? Louisa, Allison, you guys can chime in here. We would love to be able to write in where the actual place where you can purchase these, but I don't think that's possible from a city perspective. Is that right, Louisa?
Well, it's tricky on a number of fronts. One is, that's correct, we can't endorse any group or garden center or nursery. And then secondly, it may be available today and not tomorrow. So these things are ever changing. I think we could probably do it. We probably could find some categories to do it. Like, we probably could say, for example, this plant is like very, very common at all nurseries.
Yeah.
And then we could also say there's like a specialty nursery. We probably can add a list of those, but we can't specifically tell people to, or even though we're not telling people, we can't really tell them to go and to this particular nursery and buy it. So I think there's a way around it. I think, yeah, I know it's not for profit. We just can't endorse anyone because we are a civic, we are a municipal entity, and someone might be, there could be the idea that we are endorsing one over another. I think there's a way to work around that, which is to have like, okay, here's
Widely available. I love that. Specialty
and
nursery,
here's a list
owned
of
by
all the
seed.
places that are growing natives that particularly will have it, that should have it. It's also something that we can't be keeping up to date on the sourcing of these things
Right.
nonstop. Like, we just don't have the resources to do that.
Yeah, but even that
Can I-
idea of just marking like these are widely available, these are harder to find, even that would be helpful for people.
Yeah,
they,
that's a
by chance
that's a
pick
great
all the hard to
point,
find
Amy.
ones and get really frustrated, and then they can be like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
and I
these
think-
common ones."
Definitely.
Further than that, Amy, we can say like hard to find, and then we can say these nurseries often carry hard to find things, and we can list like 10 of them, but we can't be like, go to this endorsed one over another.
Yeah, Shelby, and I wonder if that is not in our outline right now, right? As in our appendices, we can add that as these list of these nurseries, if that's okay, Louisa, if we can put them in groups of 10 or whatnot. But it's also really important about not growing with the neonicotide, with the different pesticides too. So we know where those places are, and if we can find a list, that's awesome.
Now, one thing we can do in the plan too is to write a paragraph about what the neonicotinoids mean, and we can encourage people as consumers to ask garden centers to change their practice.
Jack, did you have a comment, or did your question get answered?
Well, I'm not sure about the feasibility, but I just wanted to suggest quickly, I know we can't say where something's available, but can we refer to a third party that suggests availability and thereby kind of avoid that just say, include as a column, check availability here, and it's some third party who does any sort of thing like that. We're just conveying information as to where to access further information.
It's a good idea. I don't know who has a source like that, but maybe it's a possibility that another nonprofit might be able to do that sort of thing.
We
Right.
should check with Nick, because I know when he was at Tufts, they did do some of this research. So it's possible someone like that has a list. So we could do a little bit of thinking on that.
Okay, great idea.
And Renee suggested the same thing, so yeah, I appreciate that.
I'm gonna jump in because, so yeah, like Grow Native has a great resource page of where to get plants. And I was also wondering, like how the different ways you could start plants and, like ordering bare roots from, I have a bunch of different companies, and it's like, you just order the roots in the fall or even in the winter, and you can just like throw them in the ground and they'll pop up in the spring. So offering like perhaps like a lower cost option, versus buying a $18 bluebell when you can, spend $3. So anyway, yeah, just offering different strategies of growing, and even, talk a little bit about growing seeds.
Yeah.
I'm also seeing that Anna in the chat posted a comment about a do not pull this list. so that if it appears in your garden that you don't take it out.
Mm.
That's an
That's a
interesting
great
thing.
idea. I love that.
And I appreciate your comment, Tori, about thinking beyond just buying a 2-gallon pot. Renee says she'd like to see a section on invasives, how to ID, how to remove, why they are so important to get out.
And that be,
that's
right,
true,
and
that's
that
some of
might
it.
be, yeah, that's a great idea about like an overview, and I wonder again if we can point to some resources. So we've done a lot of invasive management plans that are quite specific to different sites. And there are some really good resources already out there that we lean into for fact sheets for the best way to do removals. So there
I
might,
like
since
that.
that's
Yeah.
kind of its own separate topic, but super important, I think that in the same way where we refer people, we can do an overview, which I think is really smart. And then get some referrals, and then maybe some recommendations about trying mechanical prior to chemical and all that fun stuff. It's a great idea though.
Before I forget, I'll look over the, when we're going, listing the sort of like obligate wetland, facultative upland, blah, blah, blah. What I said last meeting, plants don't read textbooks, and having like iris and crimson-eyed rosemallow surviving the drought, like, and that if you look it up, it's an obligate wetland. So, I'll look over the list.
Take a
kind of
list, Tori, and that's what we're looking for from all of you. And there is a column that says widely adaptable, soil adaptability. And
Yeah.
that is checked. So if something is faculty, just like what you said. And some of that is, I think, things that we've experienced, but was mostly what we read, right, Shelby, from sources?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was almost entirely from sources, and we've had the exact same experience as you, Tori, with that plant in particular. And I think maybe the notes column could be something we lean into. I think this might actually be a good segue into the homework assignment, but I don't want to cut anybody off either. So if anyone has any other
Perfect.
comments,
Thanks.
let me know, or keep them coming in the chat, or let us know after. But so what we were thinking, and Tori, I think you're going to really like this assignment, and I don't want to speak for you, maybe you won't, but we've had this idea that when you go to a bookstore, and there's always the really sweet section that says staff picks, and there's a section where the staff has picked their favorite books. We feel like this might be an opportunity for you all to think about what your committee choices are, your staff picks are. What are some species that are working well for you in Somerville that so we've got this data from Nick, we've got the data from the list, but what's working in Somerville and what are your favorites? So I was going to say 5 each. That might be limiting for some of you. Maybe some of you don't have any favorites yet, but we thought it would be a really great starting point. And that's something we can use for engagement, putting out on social media. It's something we can put in as a toolkit. Hey, here's the committee's top choices. So that would be our homework assignment. I don't know, Allison, should we say for next Monday? Is that too soon?
Yeah, no, that's not too soon. I think that will be fine.
Okay.
This shouldn't be something that you have to do research on,
Probably even-
No,
have
the
a-
idea
tell
is
us what it
have a
only if
garden,
you
so-
have, right, only if you have 5, or if you want to take our plant list and say, I love these 5. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah.
Is it plants or pollinators or
Plants,
birds or
plants.
plants? Okay.
Good
Plants,
question.
but-
Good question. Yeah, the plants. Top 5 favorite plants in Somerville that you've used
Yeah,
wanna
that
use.
you feel like would be.
Just going off of Michael's comment, I really like the idea of top 5 pollinators. Like,
Yeah.
anyway.
Hey, send us your top 5
And
pollinators
also,
too.
I mean, that's also fine. I mean,
Yeah.
the top 5 interesting pollinators to watch out for that, might be in addition to all the data that kind of Nick has collected from the more umbrella species to the more at-risk species. If there are additional ones, send them, because the more information we have, that's great, because we're going to, roll out we'll show you some of our ideas about framework with this and how we monitor going forward. But having more thoughts on that and what people should watch out for would be great.
Here's an idea. What if we had like a, you have like a top 5 staffs pick or whatever. We could, like, everybody could have, you know, it could say Cynthia Stillinger, and it could say, here's my top 5 plants. She also loves these pollinators and she loves these birds. Like, you can pick
I think
your
it's
5
great.
favorites
Yeah.
of whatever you want.
Do
If
it.
you're
that
into
idea.
birds, great. If you're into,
Hey,
but
can I encourage us though to maybe stick to the insect plant relationship focus, so that maybe it's not so much just what is your favorite insect, but what is something that you've seen, like you planted this thing and you found this insect on it and that was super exciting for you, so that we like keep people focused on this interaction between you can take action and it does something for these insects, so that if you're choosing your favorite, let it be guided by, you know, you did something and you were super excited when you saw that
I think that's
blank
great,
insect
Allison.
was in your
More
yard.
details.
I like
I love
that.
it.
Yeah, I like that, Alison, because otherwise we fall into the trap of tunnel vision. Then we start to isolate, right? Humans are very good
Yeah.
at that, and then we
Mm.
forget the big picture. Right?
Yes.
It's
Yeah, I
about
love that.
system. It's about system, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's like you did something, there was a plant, there was an insect, and they're all relating to each other. Yeah.
Great.
Or maybe you cleared some mulch and then you found that you had bees nesting in your dirt. I don't know. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Hey, this is a little late because we've moved on a little bit, but when we talk about sourcing plants, one thing I've wanted to try to figure out for the garden club is how to like hook up people with cars and people who want to go plant shopping but who don't have cars. Because I think like it would be a fun thing to do, like for this Grow Native sale that's coming up, you have to sign up for a slot to go shopping. And I can take 1 or 2 people with me. And there's other nurseries around, local trips, like it'd be fun to take people in the city who are interested in this plan, like, okay, let's do a field trip out to Framingham, Garden in the Woods, or let's go visit Bluestem. But
I
I'm
think
not
that-
that good with the ways people connect. Like I know how to talk to the people I already know. So
I think this is kind of the outreach and community building piece, right? So
yeah.
we have a very popular website, Somerville Loves Urban Gardening. You know, something could come out of something similar. We could use that website to kind of connect people. To Tori's point of, you don't have to go to a nursery, there are people growing things. Like, I think there's a lot of potential here to build community and share resources around this. I don't know that it belongs in this plan, but I think there's
Yeah.
ways to do it with social media.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely not suggesting that it be in the plan, but
Right, no, but I like the idea because we are gonna provide a list in the end of next action steps and ideas for
Yeah.
engagement. We'll add it to the list because I think it's a great one.
Yeah, I think that's a great community resource.
Be awesome.
So just to keep an eye on the time, it's 4:45. Kate, do you want to go into the next chunk
Sure.
of this?
Yep. Everyone ready? Okay. All right, I'm going to share screen here. Okay. Oops, sorry. Okay. So we have developed, when Shelby's talking about, we have this giant plant list, right? And then we have all of these folks that might be entering this plan for the first time, and how are they gonna get into what they could actually plant? So we created not 1, not 2, not 5 or 6 different types of gardens. We created 37, which sounds crazy. And the idea is that these have different kinds of qualities of a sort of set of circumstances around them that give you ideas for which plants would both perform together as a plant community and might also look good together as well. So there's ones that prioritize aesthetics and ones that prioritize more the specific species like we've been talking about, both the monitoring species that Nick has brought up for a long time and also those at-risk species that we've been talking about. So I'm going to walk you through this. So first thing, so we've created each of these different garden types is, we've called it a recipe card, right? And so this list is the list of all of the different recipe cards of the different gardens that we've designed. And on the top here, they go from small gardens at the top to large. So I'm going to walk you through these, but at the top, we have pollinator pots. These are basically 24-inch diameter pots that are both for sun or for shade, and they're based on color and aesthetics, but also we're calling these umbrella gardens, meaning we're trying to use a range of species that would be blooming. The idea is they would be blooming all year or have some component. We're really thinking about when it blooms to have a resource at all times, but also that it's what we're calling an umbrella garden. It's capturing a good amount or kind of a maximum amount of the different pollinators that we've seen in Somerville. So they're targeted for a large number of species. So pollinator pots, then the next group of recipe cards down is what we call pollinator patches. These are 3 feet by 6 feet or 4 foot by 8 foot gardens that can be changed in the size. I'll show you how they kind of work together. And then they have been organized by color and also by moisture and whether they are for sun or for shade. The next ones down are our 4 by 8 bioswales. We created both a sunny bioswale and a shady bioswale. We created a tree strip, meaning this is the area in your street tree planting, that one for sun, and there's also one for shade. It's just been taken off right now. We're kind of modifying it, but that one's going to get added back on. We have the street median, which means the area in the middle of the street that might be used as a focal point, but you also have to see over, so that visibility and height are really important. And then at the bottom, living layers. These are the ones that are larger, so more of the scale of a backyard or a front yard at 12 feet by 24 feet that would typically have both trees and shrubs introduced into them because they're a larger scale. Okay, the next set of recipe cards is for what we're calling lawn conversion. So this is when we are plugging a lawn either by leaving the lawn in place and plugging it, or by taking it out via solar exposure or sheet composting, or digging it out and then plugging it with new container plants. Or if we are seeding it as mowable grasses, occasionally mowable forbs or a seeded meadow. So these are lawn alternatives, basically by seed or from container plants across the top. And then lastly, maybe most importantly, I think, as we've heard from many of the committee and also one of Nick's kind of original ideas, is this idea of having gardens that are very specific to a certain category or group of insects. And so we've created 6 different gardens that focus on what we had originally talked about as our flagship species, but also target pollinator insect partners that are on our at-risk list. Okay, so we're not going to go through these as in detail today because we have them done, but we're doing the final checks with Nick. But what I am going to take you through today is these umbrella garden recipe cards that we have developed. And the idea is we will forward these over to you for comments and thoughts and on what we've done. Okay, so for each recipe card, you can sort of see this slide deck. All of these are an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, so they're easy for people to print out on their regular printer. You're going to see that there's a diagram for each garden, and then a photographic inventory of the plant suggested. And I'm just going to describe how you use these as we go through, but there's this little instruction panel. Okay, so here's the first one. These are our smallest scale gardens. These are the pollinator pots. We've diagrammed it as a 24-inch container on the left, and we've used the same system all the way through the document, where we have structure plants, a seasonal theme layer, and a ground cover plant. Now, this is not something that I developed. This is a very typical horticultural nomenclature that's taken directly from Claudia West and Thomas Rainier's book, okay? That's Planting in a Post-Wild World. It is often used by Piet Udolf and Noel Kingsbury in his like 26 different garden books that he's used. They kind of break them down into structure plants and then these thematic plants and then the ground cover layer. So we've used this sort of horticultural reference as a way to get into the project. So the structure plants tend to be the tall ones. They're the ones there that obviously provide structure and you notice right away. And then the seasonal themes are the ones that move through the season. They tend to be the mid-height plants, and then obviously the ground covers are in the bottom. So what's fun about this diagram is what you're going to see is that these can be done interchangeably. So the other thing that's important about all of these recipe cards is that on the left, there's a scale. And so the grid, actually, we need to put the little grid markers on here. But in this particular scale, each of these grid markers represent 6 inches, so that if you were out planting your pot, you could put a grid on top of your pot and then easily put the plant in exactly where it says on the diagram. And this is a system kind of created and used by both Roy Diblick and Piet Udolf when they do their garden layouts. They use this gridded system so that folks that are doing it and copying one of their plants can easily lay it out. Okay, so you first get a diagram. Here's your pollinator pots. Now we get into your options. And so based on the very detailed plant list that Shelby just put forth, is we've created 4 different, and this particular one is about color palettes that could be utilized that would maximize pollinators. We created Yellow Sunrise, Tangerine Dream, Magenta Magnet, and Shady Symphony. We had a lot of fun with the alliteration and the names, and we thought that people could really kind of get into the idea. But at the top is your structure plant. In the middle are your seasonal theme layers, and at the bottom is your ground cover layer. Now, the idea here is you could decide, I want to actually have a pot that is yellow and purple, and you could pick from both sides. The important thing is that the structure plant stays the structure plant, the seasonal theme plant stays the seasonal theme, and the ground cover stays the ground cover. Now, what you're going to notice is, of course, on the bottom, almost all of these are 100% native, okay, native to our ecoregion. In a few cases where aesthetics have been prioritized, such as the pot, we have come in and introduced some pollinator annuals, and in a couple very tough conditions, a couple non-natives that might also support pollinators, which can be deleted if we decided as a group that we want to. And I will show you where those have been specifically inserted in, but they're almost all native except for the couple of annuals that would be native to North America, right, Shelby? If that is what we decided with, we added the ones only native to North America. But that would give you that bloom time year round, because that's the problem with the ones on the top right, is we're only going to get the bloom time of 2 to 3 weeks a year. And this is where I get really excited, because as a planting designer, and I am really thinking about the plants that want the same sort of conditions, but I'm also thinking about really highly aesthetic of what plants are going to look good together, not just from flowering, but I'm thinking about texture, I'm thinking about root structure, I'm thinking about the foliage all at the same time. So the other things in each of these cards, it's really important to see on the right, these are the pollinator groups that it's supporting out of our 6 groups, our 6 categories, bees, moths, and hummingbirds for the Baptisia tinctoria. Over on the left, so you can see down at the very bottom has all of the abbreviations. So the SP to ES means the season that it's blooming. So this one is blooming from spring, early spring, and spring to early summer. It can take wet and dry, and this would be a sun plant, and that this is a structure plant. So this would go into the structure category because it has a plus sign. Okay, so here we go. You can plant a sunrise pod, a tangerine dream, magenta, or symphony, or mix them up. The other thing we haven't added in is on the bottom right-hand corner. We have really carefully thought about rabbit tolerance as we have gone through. In the pots, I'm not as concerned because it's up higher. So we're not going to have, I've included some plants that might get munched by rabbits. As we go more into the in-ground plants, we have provided options that both rabbits might eat and rabbits might not eat, but are very clear about how we label them. And so this is the one thing, the rabbit tolerance icon has not been added on these sheets. So just know that when you're looking at these, we still have yet to add that icon onto all of them. Okay. So the next group of recipe cards is what we're calling pollinator patch. Yeah, Tori, go ahead.
So I can't see the cards. Really liking it. Are we doing grasses and rushes? And I say that
Yes.
just because okay, all right,
Yes.
haven't seen it yet, so okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard. For example, each one of the pollinator pots has one grass or rush in the pot, in addition to the other forbs as well. And sometimes there's a native in there that might be there for foliage structure, more from an aesthetic point of view. So there is a little layer of aesthetics that have been put into these umbrella gardens, not the monitoring gardens going forward that are very species specific. These are really about making sure that we have something that's also beautiful and acceptable from the community that'll live.
But that's a good point, Tori, and that is one of the things that we're striving for. So if we've missed it in any of them, we certainly want to add in.
Yeah, and that's why we're looking for all of your detailed knowledge and feedback on these too. We want to get these out to you early because, like we said, there are 37 of them. So, we want to get them out to everyone early. Yeah, Tori, do you have something else, or? I think you're muted, Tori. Sorry.
All set. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Okay, any other comments or questions before I get into the next patch of diagrams? Okay, great.
I could make a quick
Oh, yeah.
comment.
Please do, David.
I'm seeing on your list there's several plants that aren't native to New England on that card.
That's
I don't
right.
know how big of a big deal that folks want to make of that.
Right.
I think that we could certainly offer substitutes for some of those plants.
That's correct.
I also
Go ahead.
I also see a couple of things that are rare actually in New England. And there are, there's a whole range of issues, related to rare plants in the nursery industry. And I think that I don't know, again, how much the group wants to care about this. I don't know whether Massachusetts Natural Heritage would have any, anything to say about it. But it is a consideration to think about.
Yeah, these are
So
all good
like
comments
for
to write
instance,
down.
that
Mhm.
Mullenbergia is kind of a questionable plant. Doesn't really occur in New England, so it may not have all that much value as a host plant, but certainly there's things that we could substitute. So
Absolutely.
all.
And again, just so everyone knows, this is literally a very first draft. We did sort of let's get it all out there. Let's prioritize aesthetics and in this particular group, because this is pots on someone's doorstep, right? And then as we go through, there'll be ones that are more targeted by insects and species, but absolutely, that's why we're putting this out as a resource to this group. If you feel like there's a better substitute that would be more, give us specific suggestions, and also we can also take that general feedback and put a lens on too.
Yeah, and those are great points, David, and something we've been thinking about. So just to echo what Kate said, especially once you guys get a chance to regroup and come back to us, we'd be happy to hear all those points. We've been thinking about it too, so we want to know what the committee thinks. Kate, I just want to point out that it is 5. So we just want to save at least a couple minutes to chat engagement.
About engagement. Yep. I'll flip through the rest of these more quickly, but okay. Pollinator patch is a 3 foot by 6 foot patch. Okay. Structure plants. You can see how many of each one are over on the right, and then the ground covers. And then, so you can either do a 3 by 6 or a 4 by 8. You can see that on the bottom. See, this one is meant to be viewed from this side, whereas this other one is meant to be viewed from this side as well. And it says low, as you can see in the front, and then high in the back. The beauty of having a gridded system is this is very easy for someone to go and lay out on their own, but can also be duplicated or multiplied. You can imagine this can turn into an 8 by 16, or the 3 by 6 can turn into a 3 by 12, right? So there are ways that can get multiplied and brought in. Okay, so for these patches, you can either pick 6 or pick 8. We again have named them. So blue sky is sunny, dry, and under 4 feet tall. Sunny day, you can see these are, this is a yellow predominant one. Silver veil is white predominant. Then short and grassy is just what it says. This is under 4 foot tall and predominantly a more grassy style. Cool river is sunny and wet instead of dry and under 4.5 feet tall. And you can see this is where we came in to start to add the rabbit. This is one sheet we actually got to. The ones that are rabbit tolerant we really, really thought about rabbits a lot in putting all of these palettes together. So it's one of the reasons why you're seeing certain plants over others. I just want to call out the why you're going to see there's an aster purple dome on here many times because it's the only aster that we've seen to be rabbit tolerant. So there's some of these plants you're going to see over and over a little bit. Mellow yellow is sunny, wet, and under 4.5 feet tall. White shimmer is shade, moist, and under 4 feet tall. And then shade river is shade, wet, and under 4 feet tall. And you can see we still have some, we're still working on these, or work in progress. This is why we think it's so perfect to get your ideas on them now. But from an aesthetics and a growing point of view, I feel like I have a very good handle. And if we want to swap in some more based on specific species, we are definitely open to ideas. We also have this idea of the tree strip infrastructure. So this is one idea about how to make milkweed look less weedy by possibly adding in a couple non-natives on the bottom that have a similar leaf shape. We could decide that we don't want to go. This is literally the only card that we're showing non-natives. And I think to David's point, the very first one is the only one that we really focused in on anything that wasn't necessarily native really locally. Okay, the next patch is what we're calling pollinator patches or for a bioswale. And so this is something that would be both floodable and dry tolerant. And so there's the layout. And then here are the species. So this is the one that's the sunny bioswale that's under 3.5 feet tall. And then the shady bioswale that's can take, wet, dry, and under 4 feet tall. Okay, then we have the pollinator patch, which is the street tree median. You can see we're still moving around a couple symbols. So because we're not completely done with all of these, but they're going to give you a really good idea where we're at. So the street median, this is the idea of you have traffic on both sides, and it's literally the median in between streets. So these are salt tolerant, they are rabbit tolerant for the most part, and they are a focal point with a very long bloom time. Same thing with the street median and a short kind of yellow and pink, or yellow and violet, I guess is that one. Okay, then we are up to the 12 by 24 inch gardens, which are what we're calling living layers. So this is when you have enough room now to put a tree, shrub, and ground cover plants. And so these are 12 by 24 foot gardens. And so we have what I'm calling the cloud garden, which is the boxwood replacement. Basically, if you were going to create a clouded boxwood garden, what would you do instead? One called layered canopy, which is about having a tree with a shrub understory and then ground cover plants underneath it. One that is pioneer species. So this is sunny and dry, very, very dry with very, very poor soils. Water and Wonder, which this is a wet site that would be in a sunny area. And then a wooded shade area that would be for a 12 by 24 shrub and tree garden. And then we also have two that didn't fit the norm because they would have a fence or something tall on the back. So this is the edible thicket and the fence line. This is one that we did that is a fence line garden of what you could grow on the fence behind that might just be thickety in the back. And then a second one to, I think a point that came up earlier is edibility. This is one that could produce you food at the same time as being food for pollinators. That's a 12 by 24 garden. And then we have the lawn conversions that I mentioned, the ones that are the plugged lawns, seeded mowable alternatives, mowable forbs, and then the seeded meadow, which we have done, but we just haven't drafted yet. So we have our sort of pollinator party for the plugged lawn. These are our plug plants. These are the ones in yellow. We have ones in blue. And what's so nice about this again is these are by colors and aesthetic, but you can mix and match between the cards if you want to, but it's about limiting your choices and really seeing what this plant looks like in a pictorial thing so that you can choose. And then in the shade dry and moist category for that, for a lawn conversion. And then our mowable grasses are native mowable grasses and naturalized mowable grasses. And then, sorry, I went too fast there. The mowable forbs that we see. And then the lawn alternative seed mixes that we have seen in offshoots be quite good from our work. So we listed five different commercially available lawn alternative seed mixes that we have found. And also lawn alternative grass mixes with forbs. So these are just the start for these. We have 5 for each. And then we also have to kind of end the different recipe cards that we've been doing are these monitoring gardens that are very specific to an insect that we're trying to attract. As I already went through this before, I'm not going to do it. It's the same sort of thing where it can adopt a specific pollinator, and then you're going to have plants that support that specific pollinator. So for example, this is the garden for the great black digger wasp, and that this will also have a series of at-risk species associated with it that will can also be monitored at the same time with the great black digger wasp that would also like this kind of environment. And then each of these for the specific insects are going to have a little card that goes along with that insect and tells you about that insect, where it's located in Somerville, when it comes out during the season, and then those pollinator partners that it's supporting along the bottom. So there will be 6 of those. So it's a lot right now. I'm super excited about this because there's really a card for everyone, whether you have a small balcony. And to Shelby's point, I don't want to be too much more long-winded than I've already been. It's just we've already put in tons of work, as you can see, into like all of these different really kind of weighing into something that's going to be both beautiful and acceptable, I think, to a community, but also livable with salt and rabbits and the urban tolerant conditions that we need in Somerville for tough urban soils and that sort of thing. So hopefully we will circulate to these guys, so to you all specifically, so you can do a deep dive into the cards. All right, I'm gonna leave it at that, and then we'll take some comments.
Lori?
Hi. Well, okay, I have a lot of strong feels, but in particular, I feel like if we only recommend bunny tolerant species, we're really going to cut back on our certain pollinators. So
yeah,
one thing,
and Tori, it was probably hard to see, or I might not have described it right. We make sure that there are rabbit tolerant ones on each card, so you could plant a garden, but then they all have additional species in addition to just the rabbit tolerant ones.
okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, I probably should. That's why, so for example, the pollinator patch that's 3x6, you're supposed to pick 6 plants, but we've actually given you 12. So you can pick from the 12 that would work in that situation. So same thing with the 4x8, you pick 8, but we've given you 12, and then you can pick from those, is the idea.
Okay, sorry, my other thought was,
Oh, good.
Thank you for that. Thank you for the clarification. Was, since bunnies are a problem, how to make bunny cages, because those are things I, do for my clients everywhere, and you just leave them up. So the bunnies get some and you get some, and so maybe a little bit of information on what to do about the bunnies, how to share, and also like I really want to caution against people using coyote urine because that's just caged animals and people collecting their pee. So maybe we can investigate like a couple paragraphs or something on bunny cages, and I would love to take pictures and
That would be
kind of
awesome, Tori, because that's something I don't know very much about. So any resources that you have would be awesome on that. That sounds
got
great.
it.
I love that.
Awesome. Yep.
Love that.
I wanna note Renee's comment here. Can we specify straight species and not cultivars? Can you talk about that?
Sure. So the reason why so cultivars are only listed when there's a couple very specific things. So Mount Cuba, as many of you guys, I'm sure know, Mount Cuba is a native plant garden down in Maryland, and they have done trial gardens over 5 years. Many of the newest trials have all been with entomologists that look at at a species and will look at the ones that are attracting more pollinators versus others. Okay. So, and there's also sorts of issues with livability. So one of the challenges, like if you specify, for example, just New England aster, right? And you don't list the specific cultivar, you could end up with a leggy New England aster that is not going to do well in a pot, right? So we only started to list the cultivar when we thought it was important for the height. And we double checked it with the fact that we were able to find a resource that it would still be supported by pollinators. So they've been, most all of the cultivars have been taken from Mount Cuba or another resource that has verified that. I'm not going to say that's completely across the board, but the majority of them, that's why cultivars were utilized. Again, it's about finding this balance between aesthetics and making sure it's acceptable to the community from an aesthetics point of view, and also making sure we have resources. So we are open to, again, having a dialogue about that if that's something that folks feel really strong about. But again, we have seen really big differences with some of the cultivars in both survivability and obviously habitat when it comes to work.
Throw out there too, we are also continuing to work with Nick on this stuff. So
Yeah.
we'll make sure that some of these are things that he has observed. I think Clethra was the example, Kate,
Yes.
correct? That he
Yep.
said, the cultivars are seeming to have just as good abundance of visitors as the straight species. So some of this information comes from Nick.
We also wrote a very detailed white paper about this exact subject. Have we shared that with Allison yet, Shelby, or not yet? I don't. So we did a research paper on this about 5 years ago that we've been updating about nativars and cultivars versus straight species that we'd be happy to share with the group as well, which is kind of a nuanced look, which means it depends.
Yeah,
some yes, you need the straight. And some we're finding that it doesn't make a difference. So we're just trying to have a nuanced approach.
And it's so hard because it's very specific to very many plants that would have to be researched, right? That's part of the tricky part of it. But Nick also gave us a couple of recent papers. I guess we could just pass that all along, Allison. And if everybody's interested, we'd be happy to just share all of that with you. Okay. I'm going to, Tori, do you have one more comment? I'm not sure if that's an old hand.
Oh yeah, old hand.
Okay, great. Since it's 5:17, I really just want to this is an exciting topic for us too, but I want to talk about engagement just for a few minutes before we're all done. Just want to share with you what we've gotten back so far and maybe put a pitch that we keep going, which Allison, I don't know how many more map points we have that we're going to put in next week. Do you happen to know how many more there were?
Well, I haven't put in any yet, so
Okay.
however
there are.
coming. But it's I don't know, maybe 50 or so.
Oh, okay. So that is an improvement. So right now we have four maps, that 3 of which 3 of which Christian put in on our team. So as this gets updated, we'll come back to you all with more on that side. But then just to put a pitch out there, I don't know if you all talked about this last week, but Allison does have the engagement opportunities up on the website. So if, as you're chatting with people, as you're moving about the city, if there's anyone that you want to share this with, especially people that maybe aren't currently involved, these links are here where people could go in and directly input on the website. Google responses that we've gotten so far, we have 29 responses, which is not that many when we think about the population of Somerville. So we definitely want to get more. And I think this can keep going ongoing, right? A lot of this, like the pledge, absolutely, that can keep going. People can keep weighing in on that as the plan rolls out. You can see, and correct me if I'm wrong, Allison, these are mostly from sort of around Earth Day, correct? Or is that?
Yes.
Okay.
I think when I put these in, they were almost all around Earth Day, so we have a couple more events that have happened since then. Which Vanessa has the package. I don't know how many in there that we haven't input, but we've got events coming up this week too, and next
Perfect.
week, and so yeah, we
Great.
got more coming.
So I'll show you guys this, and then this will continue to get updated, and we can, we'll keep an update. But so far, out of the Earth Day folks that we have, everybody is really on board with most of the pledge items that you could participate in, some more than others. Lots of support for chatting with people, which is great. That's sort of like one of those key things that Harry talked about, right? Is how can we hand over ownership and have this keep rolling? Reduction in pesticides is really high. Lots of people said they were willing to close their blinds at night. So this is really great, right? Some of this is getting education out there on really easy, simple things that people can do to make a difference. So far, everybody has said, yeah, heck yeah, they want to see more pollinators, all the way down to just above sounds good. So lots of support in the group that's gone so far. And this is sort of echoing what we've all talked about. So the quick summary is, and I don't know, I could probably, maybe this isn't helpful yet. As we get to it, we're going to do a summary. I won't print it off and give it to you yet, but we'll keep summarizing this and hopefully get more information. I wanted to show this partially as a pitch too, to think about, we're running out of time here, but are there other places that we could get this out to that could help be filling in the gap of what isn't just an echo chamber, right? How can we get this out to people that maybe aren't currently clued in? And that's sort of an open-ended question, but just sort of something for us, I think, all to keep thinking about and keep working on.
Hey, Tori, I'll just note to your comment about a map for people to put a pin in for public space where we might have a pollinator garden. That was the initial plan. And then we were like, that's 3 easels. We're not sure we can actually pull that off at every event. So we just narrowed it down to doing an analysis at this phase. But I think that might be a nice opportunity for conversation, like a conversation starter as you're tabling, if you're at these events, being like, and we as committee members could take those and could note that down. But it's been a little cumbersome with the multiple boards already. So we made it smaller, but I think also it's a great conversation to have with folks. So I would encourage you to do that. And I see Renee's thoughts about
it couldn't be added. It couldn't be added to oh, would you be willing, where is your garden and would you be willing to plant one? It can't be added to a map that's already existing?
It's true, we could do that. We could have another pin color.
Yeah,
Yeah.
up to the person tabling. I just thought that might be kind of keeping a good eye out on on opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some of the feedback we've been getting is, these responses are individual with emails, and there's been definitely at least some that have said, I'm interested in putting in a garden, email me when the plan is done, so we can capture some of those people, even if we don't know site specifically where they are. We can make sure to share the plan with those people when it's done.
And I'll think that over more as well. And Renee, I'm taking notes of your comments too. I am gonna do an email blast for this digital version of these, and I'm hoping that you all can imagine the networks that you mapped before and think about getting this out to all of your networks. So keep that in mind. Sending an email is a little easier than spending a couple of hours at a tabling event. So hopefully this is something we can all do, you know, to try to get more responses on this sort of thing. But if anyone else has any thoughts.
This is actually to a different point. You said like if we want, you would share Nick's research.
So we had done a white paper on cultivars in, I believe it was 2018, and we've been chatting with Nick about it. He shared a couple of recent articles with us, and so we will pass those articles along.
Okay. I'm on the fence about cultivars, I have to say.
It's nuanced,
yeah.
Tori. That's the thing, because there's lots of reasons, you know, a lot of times we don't know, you know, and so it's tricky. It can be tricky, but it is a nuanced conversation. So
yeah, I mean, even if you change the height of a plant, sometimes it does affect other parts, or especially color. Color is the big one, right?
nope, for sure.
I'm interested in learning more about it too. So
Yep.
I'll pass along anything they share with me. So yeah.
Yep. And so we're gonna keep working on these draft recipe cards, but we should have, Shelby, I think the target is we're gonna get this to the group, I don't know, end of the week or so. Is that the idea? We're pretty
think
much
the
done with
sooner
them,
we
but we
can-
wanna do another check.
Yeah, we'll get it to you as soon as we can, so that hopefully you have a couple of days at least to take a peek before you meet on Monday.
That'd be great. I want to jump in and just say if there's any members of the public who want to share a thought, share a comment, you're very welcome to do so. And we're almost there at the end. Okay.
All right, well, hopefully you guys have fun looking at the recipe cards, as much fun as I did. It was like, it's great because we went through and, you know, again, this is absolutely designed for pollinators, but, you know, it is really designed for both people and what we have found at offshoots through our sort of 12 years of being out in the field that live in urban conditions. So, you know, that's why we need to have, you know, these monitoring species gardens that are a little bit more specific to the at-risk insect species and maybe things that you can't find as much in cultivation. But we really wanted to give a place for the average homeowner to start and to be successful. So that's really what these are based out of.
Right.
And making sure, again, you have bloom time, some of the real basics are met. You have bloom time all year round. That we're sort of supporting these umbrellas. So that should be the first fun dive.
Yep. Yep. And this was all just to sort of bring it back to the context that the report has a section on best practices for planting. It will outline, so if you're a more experienced gardener, it does outline what you should be shooting for. You can use the plant list and broaden your plant resources that way as well. So hopefully there's something for everybody this way. And as we wrap up, I just want to say thank you, everybody. Like, as always, great conversation and keep it coming. We're really excited to be a part of working with you all and having you all bring so much, you know, background knowledge to this project is really great. So thank you.
I'll do a last plug for tomorrow. Vanessa is going to the Council on Aging bingo and lunch. Thank you, Vanessa. Michael is going to go table at the Herring Run and Paddle on Saturday or Sunday. I can't remember. Sunday.
Sunday.
Michael, do you need any other tabling help? Vanessa, do you need any other tabling help?
I'm good.
You're okay.
It will probably be okay.
Okay.
I watched Vanessa do it, so you know.
And then we have the one after that is the at the Healy School. Amy has asked for one other person to help. It's from 5:30 to 8 p.m. on the 30th. I think that's a really great opportunity for us to talk to people who are not just preaching to the choir.
Yeah, that's
So
great.
yeah, please think about that one as an opportunity. And now I'm talking to a much smaller group, many of whom have already done outreach events. So I will tell everyone else too that they should think about helping out with those too. So all right, everyone. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Shelby.
Hi,
Yeah.
hi, I'm sorry, just quick question, because I didn't see the choices of plants. Do we have a spring ephemeral, or we have like a spring ephemeral section? Because people think, oh, you know, native plants don't bloom in March and April, and that's just not true. So I just want to give a plug for that. Maybe we
Yeah.
have a section spring ephemerals.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a great idea. Maybe even on a toolkit of the lists, there certainly could be a, hey, here's the best early spring resources. Something like that. We'll think about that, but that's a great point.
Thanks, everyone. So we'll send these materials out to you. Take a look. If you can't attend, Claire, I know you can't attend, just email comments, or, you know, if you're like, I have no idea, that's okay. But if you do have comments, this is a great chance to chime in. All right. Safe driving all.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you,
you all.
everyone.
You. Take care.
Goodbye.
Allison, do you want to stay on for just 1 second?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm gonna go through the chat.
Hi,
and make
thank
sure we
you.
got everything. Thank you.